All right, it's time to get back to spiritual study. I was doing it quite a bit a couple years ago, and it came to my attention pretty quickly that no matter how much reading or idea of how the world worked I had or was gaining, I didn't seem to be changing how I was living. And that told me that I had these ideas that were, I just got my hair did yesterday. Can you see it's like all super blonde? Even my husband's excited to see my hair. Go figure. Good morning and cheers, by the way. But I started to realize that when you're talking about happiness as part of an important part of evolving a metaphysical reality in the way of love and light and really being an effective, helpful force by choosing things that develop our happiness over time, which is not the short term sort of happiness idea we have here in the West at this time. So, what I discovered was even though I was studying it, I was not living it yet. And that's one reason I paused, because I started to realize until I can really get down to some of my core beliefs that are driving how I function in the world and shift those, I can read all day long. I can listen to Abraham all day long. And I feel great while I listen. I feel great when I read, but it's not showing up in how I'm living. And then at the same time, I started my master's in executive coaching and consulting, but thankfully, it's at the Townsend Institute, and Dr. Townsend is a well-known psychologist, business consultant, coach, the whole thing. And I really like his context, especially because I can see he's evolved a lot in his life. He's changed, he's growing. And that's always what I look for. You know, three things cannot be long hidden, I say. As I say, Buddha said, I repeat. The sun, the moon, and the truth. And over time, what we see is people who really strive for love and truth, you can see it on them. And people who don't have to keep like adding things to look like they're really about truth. It's a very interesting thing. So anyway, I love his context, and it's really powerful to learn coaching through because we're focusing on how to strengthen character. He has an actual mechanism for that, which I was really attracted to because we talk about character being an issue in today's world. It's funny, I was just talking about character and I realized how absurd it is that I'm talking about this in my curlers, but this is the time I have to do it. And my hair's gonna be wicked cool, and then it's almost like too much, you know? I don't wanna be like too perfect when you're talking about this stuff, because there's something very important and divine about sort of collapsing the micro and macro and the attractive and unattractive, and like these paradoxical things that we don't think can go together, because really the spiritual divine journey is about getting you to think, and that's about it. Like the one thing I would tell you is never ever follow my personal path for transformation or success. Would never recommend it to someone else. It wouldn't work for someone else. It really doesn't. It barely works for me. I'm just kidding. It is, but it's my thing. And the reason you shouldn't follow what I do is because you're not me. It's that simple. You shouldn't follow what anyone else does. The real spiritual divine journey is about this, right? Like getting connected to yourself, your spiritual center, your sort of personal Holy Spirit manifestation, if you will, or inner being, or spiritual half, or however you want to view it, but the piece of you that's connected to all that is, that life spark. Anything with a life spark in it has that. And so that tether, if you will. So as I went into this coaching program, I also started to realize, and they put you through the process of developing your character by digging into this sort of process that they have, and then different areas of growth that aren't what they do to build character. And I love the way he addresses it. He says it's like the trunk of a tree. So you're strengthening different areas in your life that you might not think of as character, but as you develop those, you're able to show up as a much more full, authentic, expressed, wholehearted being. Which, if you've studied anything fluffy like Brene Brown, well, we say it's fluffy, but actually she's quite the scientist and data expert, and I love that about her because I'm a data person too, and it's real data. We just think of it as fluffy because it's human behavior, but actually it's very predictable when you really get into it. But as she said, like, courage requires vulnerability. And if in a world where we need courage, we need to be able to be vulnerable. And to be really authentically vulnerable, there's something about being wholehearted. Like, I've followed the self-development path where they talk about, it's so important to become whole, but that feels so what? I don't know. It felt so, I didn't know what it meant. Then I got into transformation and they said, you're whole, perfect, and complete. And some people could really align with that and got a really positive vibe from that. But I didn't. I was like, no, I'm not. And they're like, you're not supposed to argue with us, Emily. And I'm like, but I pushed beyond that. And what I've discovered is really what we don't know, what's written in between the lines, is that the journey to wholeness is actually the spiritual journey. The more whole we become, I'm just speaking from personal experience and my own journey to wholeness, which is really picking up momentum and steam at this time, is that I can sense now why it's the spiritual journey, because I have so much more access to speak my truth, to move as the full me. And the more I do that, the more I realize how locked down everyone is. And there's so many things to that. It's such an interesting conversation. But the most key, wonderful piece of it is that we're each in control of our own little universe. Like, when God gave us free will, or whatever you want to call it, the forces of creation, when it gave us free will, we're sort of built in a bubble. No one can override us. However, we can be misled. I love the 4 agreements. He talks about being put under a spell. You can put other people under a spell. Like, you could tell someone they're ugly from the time they're young, and even if they're drop dead gorgeous, they can feel ugly their entire lives. That's putting someone under a spell. So, but that person that felt ugly their whole lives, even though they were pretty, took it on and refused to let go of it, refused to get reality in their own dream space. And that's something we get to look at. So one of the things I've realized was I really needed to start getting what I was talking about into my actual action. Like, if I can't believe in the metaphysical concepts I'm studying and what Abraham teaches me, then I'm full of crap. So I've taken a break. A lot happened. And I see now why I needed it. It felt very much like a finishing process. I also got into the school and got a lot of tools. I had a big bucket of tools, but I hadn't used them in a while in this way. And they just kind of came out of the box and got really amplified in a beautiful way with Dr. Townsend's methodology. So I feel much more capable of using them in an effective way. And so in that, also a big piece of that character structure is integration. Imagine that, which is the practice of going from fragment to whole, as a huge piece of being able to move forward as a more character-based individual, as a more courage-based individual. So I've been becoming more whole. And then I've been realizing that's really what the spiritual journey is about in a lot of ways. And so in that, I'm launching a business and I'm trying to figure out, what is my voice? What is my mission? What am I making content for? Why? You shouldn't torture yourself. Like, no one makes content to humiliate themselves on purpose. That's not really something people do. That's why I say don't follow my path. But that's something I've actively done. It's something specific for me that came as a calling from inside of me that works for me. And that's why I would say no one else should do it, because it's really unique. And I'm very unique, but so are you. And I think I got more of an experience in life that allowed me to enjoy my uniqueness because I lived in other countries from a young age, because I never fit in. I never really had to. I wanted to. I did. And I gave it a good effort. But it's just not who I am. And what I've been realizing over these last months is my whole life people said, she's weird because she's homeschooled. She's weird because she lived in Europe. But what's really been coming to me is that isn't true. I mean, those things are true. They did amplify it, but I came in very different and weird. And I just had a spiritual trauma. It's actually a trauma treatment, but it ends up dropping into the spirituality camp because trauma usually goes deep. And I brought a piece of myself back. Like, it's a fascinating work, but basically there was a piece of myself hanging out. This practitioner I've worked with, I trust him, he's awesome, helped me find like this piece of myself that was kind of hanging out behind, that wasn't really with me. And we don't think of ourselves as that fragmented, that literally like we can spiritually fragment pieces off. We know we aren't completely whole in our relationships. We know when we move into spaces, we're not able to always speak our truth, or we edit out our opinions and thoughts. And we have a lot of good reasons for that right now. But I'm pushing beyond that to say that there's something else there. And I discovered that it was, even though I thought I was not saying things in situations as an active choice, I was actually not saying anything because I couldn't. But when you're never pushing through that wall, you don't know that you can't. You think you have choice. So more and more in my life, I'm beginning to wonder if passive people are actually passive, or if they think they're choosing to be quiet and don't know that they can't speak. Like they're not choosing to be quiet. They're just silenced and they don't know it. I mean, it happened to me and I didn't know it. And so as I've started to know it, I've tried to create, I realize, a mechanism to break through that, which for me ended up being a time when random social media and videos were coming out and I could make them, and making them by myself was hard enough. But then you always have to keep going on the spiritual journey. And so then I started posting online, and I got around the personal humiliation piece by doing animals for a long time. So at least I could film the animals and post them. But there was something about the messaging I realized that they were giving animals that most people would miss if you're just superficially scrolling. But if you could take the time to really be with the animals and be with the video I would post or what was happening or the music, there's an experience. So then I began to wonder, could I create some kind of content that could create experiences or real connection or insights for those people who, like me, don't have a way to break through their inability to speak with actual humans? I guess that's what I'm getting at. I mean, that just came out that way, but I have had so many like therapists and people, but that doesn't help. Talk therapy doesn't help if you can't talk. You just end up making up a story to that person because that's what you were taught to do your whole life, because you're already obligated out. You're already giving your power away for your voice. So it doesn't matter who you slot in front of you, whether it's your mom or your partner or a therapist. That's why I think coaching is so powerful, because we ask questions. We don't fill the space. The trauma treatment I'm doing is very much, I bring the content. The practitioner really just runs a process. And I like that because it's my space. And I see more and more how coaching gets to be that. But that I think a lot of us think we can speak in scenarios and we can't. I think it's showing up in our relationships and our workplaces. And I do feel like the American upbringing, or just normal Western upbringing at this point, you sort of have this group think that's kind of forced. I only went to American high school for 2 years, and it was shocking as I reflect on it, because gosh, the forced group think, like I couldn't get in with a group of girls because if I dared to express, this is women with women, this is why I had guy friends, because if I dared to express a different opinion with female groupthink, I was cast out. Like, either get in line. So there were two choices for me. I either had to be the alpha of a group and run how they think, which I have equal issues with, or not be an alpha, be like a beta, and then follow whatever wild whim of the alpha. And I don't do that either. I am an alpha, but I don't request that other people think like me. I want a pack where everyone's like being awesome in their own way and thinking for themselves, and then bringing me input if I'm going to be at the top. I'm not supposed to be running things. I'm supposed to be garnering all the input from the people on the ground doing the work. That's how I view it, because I've done both. And it's pointless to try to lead if you have no idea what's going on the ground. You're just a propped up idiot running around, no matter who you are. I've followed it down every path, every gender, every color, and people get exactly the same when they walk this similar process. And I was on that process and I was becoming that. And that's one reason I was like, no. And thankfully Spirit stepped in and helped me make that nice step down. So smooth, so graceful. Just kidding. It was not graceful, but it was so worth it. So what am I saying? I'm saying that We can talk all day long about what we believe, but until we're willing to sort of shut it off and get real with ourselves in a mirror a little bit about how we're really living, what's really showing up, the work we do is just checking a box to make it seem like we're growing. And that's, if you really knew me in real life, you know that's one of my pet peeves. Don't tell me this is going to help me. And even me, don't me sell myself on the lie that I'm trying to change when I'm really not. Because you never get anywhere from there. You're better off saying, I'm not really up to changing and I'm just going to stew in my stuff. And wait until you're ready to change and then put in the effort and actually change, and you'll feel so good. There's nothing worse than watching people sort of muck along in life and want to get better and talk about getting better, but really they just kind of produce the same level of results. I'm not saying that's bad, that's human, but don't complain about it then. Like, get real with yourself. Be like, I'm not up to change. It's just not what I'm up to. And I don't really care, so I'm just going to do what I do. Well, that didn't become a reading now, did it? That was just me talking. So now I'm going to go ahead and do a reading. You can go find it on the other page.